So my first publication was in a great journal called the Cincinnati Review, which is out of the University of Cincinnati, and it is a pretty prestigious journal. I did like the undergrad thing, so I mean I went to undergrad obviously, but I didn't try to get published there. So if I had done, I probably would have gone to Loris or whatnot. But I waited a long time before I was published in anything. So. But yeah, my professor, Jerry Shapiro, the late great Jerry Shapiro, had sent it in for me. So that was a big help too. When, you know, they say like magazines are all about networking, and to some degree that's true, to some degree it's not true, but it definitely, I think, helped that he sent it in with a little note saying, you know, hope you'll consider this. And I was just so thrilled when they accepted it that I remember walking in at my father. I was at my uncle's house and I didn't really know it that well. I like walked into this room to tell my dad, and he was like in the bathroom, and it was terrible. And so that's like my memory of getting published. But it was pretty great.
Was it a poem or?
It was a short story called The Fine Illusion, and it's about a group of spiritualists it's a historical story based on, I was in a class where I was doing some research on these spiritualists who, you know, they're people who think they can like talk to the dead and whatnot. So that seemed pretty cool. So I wrote a story about that. And yeah, it was a pretty weird story, but I'm proud of it, and I'm glad that that was a good first publication experience for me. It's both depressing and heartening. Depressing because you realize just how many writers are in the same space as you, and trying to, you know, get into the same sorts of journals. And then heartening because, well, first of all, you realize that, okay, my stuff is, you know, better than a lot of the stuff, right? So you like, it's sort of a superiority thing what you do, which is fine. But also you see that, you know, even writers who are very, you know, much farther along in their careers, they have the cover letter, as you know, they send in, they might have some really top tier publications, you know, even they are still in the process of building up their career and sending to places like Prairie Schooner, and, you know, we may or may not take them, and that's, that just goes to show you that, you know, there's a lot more that goes into a editorial process than just pure talent or pure quality. So, you know, that kind of gave me some perspective on my own writing and submitting process.
From your experience, would you say that it's an insider's game, or is there some excitement that even established journals feel about maybe being the first to publish somebody?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that you say, you know, yeah, I think that journals like to be the first to publish someone. I'd like to think that it's not an insider's game. I think it does help to have connections, but I think that people tend to make a little bit too much of that. And I think sometimes people get a little bit frustrated that, you know, they're not getting published, and they're like, oh, it's so rigged or whatever. But I think ultimately, like, you know, your work will find a home. You know, shouldn't be frustrated about that. I try not to be frustrated, and I try not to put it off on larger forces, you know, like I think that ultimately you can break into the system without having, I don't know what a connection would be, like a letter like I had for Jerry. You know, I don't think that you need that. I've certainly gotten other publications without that letter. So. Yeah, well, you know Dylan.
Oh, Dylan Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he took creative writing class with me. That makes me totally happy, and I hope to, you know, have many more students who get what they want in terms of being validated by a magazine saying, okay, your work is good, we want to publish it, because it's just such a great ego boost, and, you know, it's well deserved too. And I think in his case and in others, you know, I'm very happy for people when they get what they want. Yeah. I don't think it's going to make a difference when editors read your cover letter. I don't think they're going to care. But what it will do is give you a ego boost, right? And it also shows you about the submission process, and it shows you how to bring a finish the process you started, right? So sometimes, you know, we have a story that feels finished, but it just hangs out in the, you know, Microsoft Word doc somewhere in the computer. When it's published in a magazine, then it really feels like it's finished, right? And maybe some people read it, and that's a great gift. So even if 3 people read your story in Loris, that's awesome. I mean, like I said, probably only 3 people are reading my story in a more prestigious journal, so it's, like, get used to it. That's what you're going to get. So I think, yeah, absolutely publish in Loris. It's not going to, I would say you'd be deluding yourself that it would make a real career difference, but I think it's still a great thing to do. I don't know if journals necessarily want to have a whole lot to do with me or you in general after you publish. Like, I don't think they're like ready to make your career at that point. I mean, I don't really know what that means because you make your own career, right? Like, you have to produce a lot of books to make a career. That's up to you. But I think if I was like trying to sell my, like, get a blurb from my novel, you know, a little thing on the back of the novel that says this is a great novel, I could probably go to one of the editors that has accepted my work and maybe ask them to do it. So that's a good networking sort of benefit of getting published. But I'm not in touch with any of them or anything. Have you heard stories from people who have like gotten really great things happening from the editors who published their work?
Well, not necessarily in a career sense, but on a smaller scale, just like, you know, meeting a writer that you were really excited about or reading, or, you know, being connected more with your audience or getting letters. Ooh, like getting letters from people who really like your work.
No, that doesn't happen.
Ever happened to you?
Yeah, I would love to be that famous where someone, I mean, because even if you're publishing in relatively prestigious journals, no one reads them, right? So, like, I mean, for anyone to read literary fiction, you have to be really, like, either a bestseller or in the New Yorker. So, yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. I think to really famous writers it does. But you know what's cool is getting your work, like, in the same journal as another writer you admire. That's, like, really cool because then you're like, well, I wouldn't say up to the standards of that person, but at least I have been shown in the same space as they are. So it just shows that you're moving up in the world, and it's also a great honor. So I've had that experience, and that is very validating. I remember the Cincinnati Review. There's a poet named Bob Hickok, and his poetry was like very close to mine in the space of the journal, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great, because I had just I had recently gotten into his work, and it was just so thrilling for me. So that's one example. But I mean, I don't know if I don't think he's like, oh, Claire Harlan-Orsi was right next to me in the journal. Like, I'm very much trying to still get my stuff out there, and, you know, build a name and a body of work for myself. So I guess that one challenge that I've faced in that is trying to have fun while also focusing on a finished product. So sometimes you can get a little bit into the headspace of, oh, I have to finish this story and make it perfect so that I can get published, and so I can have another, you know, notch in my belt or whatever, and another rung on the ladder, how many metaphors I'm going to use, to that that amazing teaching job. But I think it's important to remember that sometimes if you get too focused on that goal, your writing can become stale and you don't have fun with it anymore, and that is ultimately why I'm writing in the first place, because it's fun. So I try to sort of balance those two things together. I usually start with a premise, so I'll have a kind of premise turning around in my mind for a while. And, you know, like right now, I just started a story, and I thought, you know, what if, this is going to sound weird, but what if like a transgender support group and anti-abortion like protesters met at the same Planned Parenthood? I'm sort of thinking about that interaction, right? I mean, this is whatever gets me going, right? So I'm like thinking about this, and I'm mulling over in my head, and, you know, I'm usually working on other stuff, so I'm kind of like hoping that it doesn't take over my life to the point where I can't work on other stuff. So, but then at some point I actually start writing it, because I'm like, okay, this has stuck around in my head so much that I need to start writing it. And then I'll just do, like, I'll work from scenes, you know, like I'll have a particular scene in mind, and I'll start with that. And I just try to, you know, let myself be really rough for at least the first, like, few months, years, whatever, like, because it's going to take a while to get it too polished. So I try not to think about the finished product too much at the beginning and all, and just sort of let myself work very roughly. There's a theorist, Slavoj Žižek, who said, I don't write, I just take notes and then I edit them. And that really helps me, because when you think about writing a perfect sentence, you can get really, at least I get really frozen. So it helps me to kind of just take a bunch of notes and then make them, you know, sound good. Then eventually I have a story, and then I'm like, okay, this is a draft, and then I revise it for a long time, and that's it. Yeah, I usually have like, so embarrassing because my stuff gets rejected so much, and writers don't like to talk about this, or at least I would like, you know, rather not say, but it's like if it's been like 25 times or something, I'll have like a number in my mind or something, then I'll be like, okay, now I'm going to stop, put it aside, and then come back to it, revise it, and then send it out again. So that's sort of my strategy for it. It is tough because I'm used to external validation. You know, I was a good student and everything, so, but it's just totally different. Like, you can't look for your validation from that, because, you know, you are going to get so many rejections, even the best of writers do. So you have to kind of just say, okay, it's part of the game, let's just stop and revise again, and send it out again. Yeah, well, that's one of the great things about being in grad school, is you have, you know, people around you who are interested in the same things that you are, and able to, well, what's one thing is cool is that if you have someone who stayed with you for maybe 4 or 5 years in the program, and they know your work, that person can really speak to what you're doing, and you can speak to their work as well. So that's a real gift to be able to have that. It's one of the really cool things about grad school. And that happens in formal setting, like in workshops, and in informal setting, you know, over coffee or beer or something. And that's a real joy to be able to exchange work with people and make friends in that way. Yeah, it's not really worth it, like, in any way. Like, so it's just, I mean, I think it'd be crazy to be like, this is a great thing to do, like, because, you know, no one reads my stuff, like, it doesn't make me any money, like, I've made, you know, like, maybe 1 month's rent on, like, my publications, you know, like, yeah, I mean, there's so many other reasons I could elaborate, but, so I think I just do it out of a compulsion and out of a sense that it brings me joy. So there's that. It does bring me joy. So if it doesn't give you joy, then there's really no reason to do it. But it helps me make meaning in the world, and it helps me work through issues that are troubling me. It helps me think critically about the world. It helps me engage with other writers that I like, and think of myself as in conversation with writers that I like. So there's definitely a lot of reasons that I write. None of them are practical at all. I would say that even though all this publication stuff is very important, it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is to figure out how you can have the most fun writing as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was fun.